August 6th, 1990.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like you all to smile because you and the Expos are on candid camera.
The Expos are on candid camera, folks, and we've all been taken.
Well, I guess we have.
And
We
I
were
mean
sucked
it.
right into it, believe me. They did a great job.
The backstory on that well-received episode.
Well, to be honest, we didn't really know a whole lot about it in advance, which was intentional. I arrived at the ballpark with Jim Riggs. We went upstairs and discovered this whole camera setup to the booth next to us, and kind of were, what the devil is going on here, or what's happening. So the GM at the time explained to us that, well, this is what is going on, and he did explain that, you know, the candid camera stunt. He didn't talk about the specifics of the stunt that was going to take place, just that it would be going on in front of us. And it wasn't so much to fool us, it was to fool, you know, Pete Hubble and Skip Pierce, who, you know, obviously if you've heard the video or heard the audio on several occasions, is wildly funny, especially Skip's reactions to things that were going on.
Have no idea about the candid camera stunt that will soon occur, and we'll listen in occasionally to their report.
We're set now. We got time called, and there's confusion between the pitcher and the catcher, so let's get together.
How can you get messed up on the first signal of the ball game?
One pass, three, slider with a pitch. All right, cool.
This is ridiculous. I mean, this is the 48th game of the season, fans. If you don't have your signal straight by this time, I mean, you open up with a fastball. 9 times out of 10.
Started the ball game yet.
I tell you, maybe it's time for Baxter to get himself a set of glasses. They ought to take him to the optometrist tomorrow to get him examined, as Hargis evidently not the culprit. He doesn't seem to believe it either for some reason or other.
I don't understand what's going on here. I absolutely don't understand. Looks like Baxter is ready. He's looking in, and he's still nodding no. Still nodding no, and I don't know what he's doing. He's still nodding no. As if he can't see or something. His time is gone.
Now the home plate umpire is going to go over and talk to management, I believe, or they're going to put him on base.
So it's good news for the refreshment stand. You folks that's down there in the refreshment area, stay in line. We haven't started the ball game yet. Still waiting the first pitch. We're getting time called again. And now the umpire again going out to talk to the pitcher. And he pointed, he's out of there. He threw Baxter out of the ball game.
Throw him out of the game. Look at Baxter. He just dropped the ball and walked off.
He threw Baxter out of the ball game. One of the most unbelievable things in the history of professional baseball we're seeing right here.
Peter was a little upset that we had found out about this. He wanted to complete secrecy, and of course we couldn't have that because we had to know what was transpiring. So.
Remember that all, Pete?
Oh, yes. Very fortunate that Skip didn't come out with one of his famous "God damn it." He was very close. He gets upset quickly. There would be something like that.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. It was well done. No, they handled it well. I felt sorry for the pitcher. He was so befuddled out there.
Second game of a doubleheader.
It was, right.
And so therefore there was, by definition, people had new umpires. Things just, there was a transition.
There was a transition. We knew in the first game something was up at that point. It wasn't explained to us, I don't believe, till a little bit later on in the proceedings. But once we knew, it's like, well, okay, you know, here we go, and we'll see what kind of happens. And I've watched the episode. Of course, it's on YouTube. I've shown it to my grandchildren, who are somewhat puzzled about my role in this, but it was a lot of fun to watch unfold. We weren't listening, obviously, to Pete or Skip on the radio. We heard all that later. And it was a lot of fun. It was very funny.
So in real time, Todd, you know, you play the music and the first batter comes up for the opposition. And so you can't really play music in between them.
No.
The batter's up. So you're basically there stymied until something happens between batters.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So you're there watching it in real time, and it takes a while.
Oh, it was taking a long while. And I mean, we had a notion, obviously, what was going on, so it kind of helped us to understand it a little bit better. But it did take, I don't remember exactly how many minutes it was, but of course Bob Bailey never did throw a pitch, because had he thrown a pitch, it would have been an official ball game. So, you know, and I believe Pat Daugherty was there at the time, and Pat was in on all this, and the opposing team and the opposing manager were in on all this. So people were just basically rolling the floor, watching poor Bob trying to scratch his head and figure out, you know, why can't I throw a pitch? What are these signs that my catcher is showing me when I know every sign there is? And you can see him just shaking his head. And by this time, Bob, Payne, and I were just, you know, we were dying. We were up there together, just dying of laughter. It was so funny.
So set the scene. You're in the main press box, and you're there with the control panels and where the music is and all of that stuff. And then normally, sometime during the game, there is the scorekeeper, who's Jim Riggs.
Right.
But Jim, early on in the game, is down on the field, right?
Right. He was up. He was there when this one started. Being a doubleheader, he was always, you know, always very well prepared for this. So there wasn't, other than changing a lineup, you know, we were pretty much ready to go. So
Was he there during this?
Oh, yes.
Up with you guys?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And Bob.
And Bob.
So that's the three that are in the center section.
Yep.
Then, just for the camera, there is a divider and a door.
They were in another box to the left of us. They had all their equipment there.
That was Skip.
Skip and Pete were a little bit further down.
Okay.
The radio booth was, I think, 3 or 4 things down from us. So they were there getting ready to do their broadcast.
The cameras, you're looking at the field, they were to the left?
They would be to our right.
Okay.
Right. The cameras for the candid camera folks were right next to us in the next booth.
Okay. So Skips and Pete are over to the left, cameras to the right.
Right.
You're in the center watching this unfold. At some point, does a producer come by and hand you something to say, you know, we would like all of you to smile?
No, I ad-libbed that when Peter Funt turned around and, you know, told Bob to look at the camera, because he was on candid camera, and that's when I announced, you know, we'd like everybody to smile. You're on candid camera. Everybody was laughing. People were standing. So it was a great memory of the time I spent down there.
Now that at some point during that game, because obviously that all occurred, was there a pause? After we'd like to all to smile, you're on candid camera, there's this applause. Does Peter disappear? I mean, what happens post?
Post really had kind of just quieted down. We did have a gap in between, obviously, to kind of get poor Bob Bailey back in his proper state of mind so he could continue with the game. I forget what the outcome of the game was, frankly, but yeah, it was a few minutes, and then you know, Peter came upstairs, and he was there for a few minutes, really, and we kind of just then proceeded with what we normally had been doing.
At that time, Peter Funt's upstairs, there's the camera crews. Was there any interaction at that moment with the WJTN guys?
No.
So they
not as far as I know, no.
No. So they just kind of went on. And
well, they had no choice, really, to go on with the broadcast, because, you know, I forget what Skip said. I heard a couple things. I think it's been so many years, but
it was priceless.
Oh, it was priceless. Yeah, Skip was a priceless guy. Skip, we could talk about Skip for 2 hours.
We might have a few minutes here. And so, other than that, the guys packed up their bags and said, "Thanks, we'll see you."
Pretty much. They were done. They had the footage they wanted, so over time, very quietly, they put everything back, you know, in their cases and headed on out.
was the game gets done, you go walk downstairs, you see Tom O'Reilly, maybe you saw Tom. Did anybody talk about it after that, during the evening?
They probably did. I don't recall too much conversation because, again, the normalcy of the game kind of took over. I heard comments about it the next day from a lot of people who said they were there, and yeah, we had a lot of fun with it. And do you think they'll ever come do it again? I said, I don't know. We've had a lot of interesting things happen here. This was one of the most interesting things that ever occurred down there when I was working during those years.
Well, it's a good segue. You have such a great voice, and you're such a presence down there. But how did you get into the kind of public speaking business?
Well, I got into the public speaking business when I got out of high school because I did go to work for WJTN as an engineer. And we only worked a few hours a week for the outstanding salary of $1.85 an hour. And George Flieger hired me. And I had no idea what I was getting into. I knew I liked broadcasting from the time that, I was a little boy. And, I was a huge television addict, growing up in the 60s, lots of great TV, and I was, just locked at the set. And I developed a voice probably in high school. And I did a couple of high school related things. In fact, as I'm looking out the window at the building where the old teleprompter business used to be, I went in there as a high school senior and did some work very, very early. And I was in radio for 3 or 4 years, then decided I needed to make a living. So I went to JCC for a while and just kind of went on with other things and other employment opportunities that I had at that time. And about 1979, I had gotten married, and my wife liked to go to the games. And we were both huge Yankee fans, which I still am to this day. And we just went down there and sat and watched the games, got to know everybody around us, a lot of the people that I'm sure you know and I knew when we were there. And it was a lot of fun. And the young man that was announcing was very, very young, and he was struggling a lot with what he was doing. And honestly, the first couple of years I was there, I really didn't pay that much attention, but I kind of was getting into this, having been there long enough. And a couple of my friends said to me, you could do this. You could do that job. I said, well, I don't know. He says, well, why don't you ask about it? Okay. So I wandered into the stadium in early 1982 and met a very, very young Scott Kinberg, who had just been hired by Dan Lanetta to be the assistant general manager. Scott didn't know me from Adam. I didn't know him from Adam. And we started to talk, and I blatantly said, I think I could do a pretty decent job as the announcer here. If you're looking for one, just keep me in mind. Well, 3 days later, I got hired. Dan Lanetta called and said, we're going to give you a shot. So that's how I ended up in that box. And I was terrified for the first 3 or 4 games. I met Jim Riggs for the first time. Again, none of us knew anybody. I mean, I did not know them. I've heard of Jim, obviously, but I did not know him. As it turned out, it started a 34-year friendship that was very, very close. But Bob was there. Bob had been there for eternity long before I got there. He was running the scoreboard in the 1940s, so he knew that ballpark, and he was a fun guy. And gradually, we just kind of built this friendship over all those years and all the experiences that we had. So I had to learn a lot. I remember Dan Lanetta handing me 2 cassette tapes. That was my music for the game. And he basically handed me a small tape recorder, brought it upstairs, hold the mic up to the speaker when you want to play some music. Okay. And I would, I knew enough there were different cuts, and we were coming out of the disco era, so we had a lot of stuff on there. So, I would play music in between, and they gave me some ad copy to read and told me exactly how to read it, when to read it, and so on. And over those years, I'm a person of process. I need to have everything in good order to function. And that's true in anything I do. You can ask people that know me. And I learned a lot of organizational skills, believe it or not, from Jim Riggs, who was probably one of the most organized human beings I ever knew. He kept score the same way, used a red pen, everything was laid out exactly as he wanted it, nothing was left to chance. So I said, I think I need to watch him and learn. So I learned how to keep score. Even though I knew baseball, I was never keeping score, but I did keep score. And we decided to expand on the music a little bit. So again, the equipment got better. I started bringing in more stuff that I found to play from contemporary radio and country radio and things like that. And gradually we kind of like built this process together. Bob was always Bob. He ran the scoreboard. He was happy doing what he did. Jim did what he did. But I had to learn a lot of stuff in putting it together. Over those years, I was literally calling advertisers that we had with the ballpark and getting copy information from them and putting it into script form in a book, all in order. Every inning, everything that we did was, I wanted it just so, I didn't leave anything to chance. Then I added the organ, because there, a ballpark should have an organ. My daughter had a small Yamaha keyboard.
Okay.
So I grabbed the Yamaha keyboard, I stole it from her because she wasn't using it, and took it up there and plugged it in, and we managed to figure out a way to tie it into the audio system. And I would sit there playing the basic, ballpark stuff, bum, 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 bum. And I developed kind of a repertoire of doing that. At the same time, I was playing tapes and I was playing music, and it was all cassette tape back then. CDs didn't come in until probably the mid-'80s when we finally got some of them. So yeah, I just kind of built this into this system that seemed to work fairly well, and just followed that pattern, but really, honestly, for the entire time, the 18 years that I was there. I never really changed it too much. The bodies that were managing things changed, but I tried to stick with what I had been doing and was working. And if somebody had a substitute for me, and occasionally they did, they would come up, here, you need to do this, 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 here's the time you have to do it. And, so we didn't really miss a beat too many times.
You being a process guy and an order guy, and I remember your book, seeing your book, but not every day goes according to script.
Oh no.
So give us the incidents when all of a sudden, because that can throw you off. It can throw Jim off. And there were times, I know Jim, having interviewed him in the past, he talked about that a few times.
Yeah, we had some moments along the road, as you do in this business. And they'll throw special promotions at you. And promotions were usually is where all the fun took place, and I got to participate in some of these things. I still recall being rolled down the third base line in a giant metal ball, holding a microphone, having eaten 2 or 3 hot dogs, and it was something connected to the old fountain bowl, and they rolled me down while I talked. I was not feeling very well when I got out of the ball. I was very dizzy, number one, and my stomach was in real bad shape. But we managed somehow to get the game in that night. I was sitting there rocking back and forth, because don't ever let me do that again, kind of thing. The promotions really were, honestly, that's where most of the fun did occur. And we had one fellow, his name was Mr. Dynamite. And he came to the ballpark, and again, ballparks all over the country hire these folks to come in and entertain for an inning or whatever, and he was a fellow that billed himself that he was going to blow himself up all the time. And he wore this Evel Knievel-like suit, went out to second base, and surrounded himself with, firecrackers and what have you. And, he would set him off. And I looked at this guy, and he literally looked like he had pockmarks all over him from all of the years of doing this. I don't know how many times he got burned, got hurt, and it was like he wouldn't go away. He was there for days and days and days. And, after a while it was getting a little tiring, to watch him do this on a continuing basis. But that was, that was very, very interesting, to say the least.
Was he come in as a special promotion?
Yeah. I forget which general manager I attribute that to. It wasn't Dan Lanetta, it was further on down the road. It might have been Tom O'Reilly that brought him in.
You were there for, I think 2 or 3 times we had the San Diego Chicken.
Yeah?
How did that work script-wise? I mean, he clearly, he's doing all the activities.
Mm-hmm.
He does have a script each inning. Does he hand that to you to introduce?
Oh, there was not, again, with that, there was nothing left to chance. They had a set script that they gave you, and you followed that script right down the line when he was ready to come out. And he and his partner did it, and surprisingly, they were both the same height and the same weight. So you pretty much figured out that on certain nights they switched roles. But they did the same routine. Audiences down there, the crowd loved them. We had a great time. My little daughter at the time, Jennifer, she was about 4 or 5, and she got to be one of his chicks. And we still have a picture of her somewhere, trailing along with some other young kids as the chicken did its things on the field.
Well, one of those chicks, in addition to your daughter, was my daughter.
Right.
I remember that.
I think you and I talked about that a long time ago, yeah. But it was a thrill. They just loved it, and he was hysterical. And every year we kind of looked for him to come back, And eventually, I don't know whether he stopped doing it or just did not do it as much anymore after a certain time.
Maybe 3 times, because I know at least my 2 daughters were part of that. And there's a video of Jennifer.
Yes.
Out there on YouTube.
Yes.
That's mine. Yeah, good deal.
Are you hot? Right. Yeah, you were real good. You did everything he did, huh? All right.
One down. Good job, baby chick. All right. Okay, kids, back in your room. Woo!
You there when Max Patkin was there?
I was there when Max Patkin was there. Max was kind of, I think, down toward the end of doing it, but he did his comical clown act, that he did on the field. I was there. They had the Silver Bullets girls softball team come in and play. I was there. Oh my, there's so many of them that come to mind. Different things that we did through the years. I recall one of the nightly promotions we did is the Phantom of the Ballpark, where we would play. And at the time, Phantom of the Opera was very big in Toronto, so we had a audio tape where we would play that infamous theme, and the Phantom would enter driving down the third base line, throwing things into the crowd, whatever they were doing at the time, and you read the same copy every night, as that occurred. And it got old in a hurry, but it didn't matter. We still did it. Someone was paying for that, so we continued the promotion.
Did you have to give up your public address announcing to if there was a promotion where it required somebody to sort of take over the announcing during that time period, whether it was a break in the action or fireworks or something where you had to say, all right,
very rarely.
Yeah.
After doing it for so many years, I just did it. If they said we need to do this, okay, I'll do this.
There wasn't they didn't bring out a public address.
Oh no.
King and his Court, were you there for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Eddie Feiner.
Eddie
Feiner was amazing. Amazing man. Very talented guy. Very friendly guy. Just fantastic to watch him work on a field. I met Babe Ruth's daughter, if you recall, Dorothy, when she came in with driving in the Babe's car. Mm-hmm. That's a very happy memory. We had a night when we dropped, I forget what it was, we dropped something from a helicopter. Mm. We dropped the first pitch from a helicopter to the field. That was like, I don't think we're going to be able to pull this off, but they didn't catch the ball, as I recall, but they did drop the first pitch from a helicopter flying over.
You realize the speed that has when we're finally
I would imagine. I'm glad I'm not the person that was standing out there to catch it. But we had some very, very funny moments that just occurred. We had a young couple on the hill behind the left field wall who decided to come out and entertain the crowd. I won't go into the details as to how they entertained the crowd, but the people in the right field stands were in hysterics by the time they...
Were teenagers, young enough?
Yeah, I was going to play an inappropriate song and thought better of it at the time. So, but we did see this, honestly, these kind of things went on, and we would just laugh and, and have a great time. The ball players, we didn't have a lot of, I actually didn't have as much interaction with the ball players later in the career than I did at the beginning. But one of the things I recall, I had to go down to get lineups prior to the game. And I went into the, at the time, Expos locker room to get them. And I'm very, 28 years old, got my pad in my hand, and I walk in and I'm looking at this belly button. And what is this? And I look up, and it was Randy Johnson. Because he wasn't here long, but he was here. And I thought, I'd never seen a human being this tall. And what does he do here? Of course, he was a pitcher. So that was an interesting experience, to say the least, in meeting him. And of course, I met Andres Galarraga. He played here a year, ended up in the major leagues. A lot of guys we met went to the major leagues. We did have years where we had nobody go to the major leagues. In fact, they probably didn't make it back to the hardware store where they came from, because I was riding around in a golf cart with Jim and Pat Mullen. You remember Pat Mullen? Yes. And I asked Pat, what do you think of this year's team? And he says, I'm releasing the whole bunch of them tomorrow. This is not working. They'd won 20 games, I think, the entire year.
Yeah.
And it was that nobody was good. There was nobody to salvage, So you got a lot of inside stuff like that going on. One of the memorable ones, though, is in around 1980, 79 or 80. Maybe well after that, because I started in 82. Well, I guess it was about 83, 84. I was young, and I was playing music in the stadium before the game. So I went down to the dugout to get the lineups, and it was the Oneonta Yankees were there. Mm-hmm. And there's this blonde kid sitting in the dugout, and I went down to get it, and he kind of asked me, he says, you play the music upstairs? Yeah, I said, I'm the announcer, yeah. He says, I really like what you're playing. Yeah. We got to talking a little bit, and he says, I like baseball, but I like football and a couple of other sports. I'm really kind of trying to decide what I want to do with my life, career. Okay, good luck to you, good luck. It was John Elway, who the next year made the jump to playing pro football.
He did pretty well.
Yeah, say the least. Yeah, he did. But you had experiences like that, and that's you remember those things very clearly.
So you're to the left of Jim Riggs, Bob Payne's to the right. There's a hot play to the shortstop. He's sort of handcuffed. The guy is safe at first. Jim is the guy that's got to make the call. Error, hit. Does he seek guidance?
On occasion he would. Most of the time he made the call. And he made the call correctly 99% of the time. Bob would disagree with Jim sometimes. So the two of them would start arguing over it. And, we'd get nasty looks from usually the opposing dugout if the call went against them. A lot of yelling occurred from the dugout. Some things are not repeatable as to what was said. I know Jim was accosted several times going down the stairs to, leave to go down and get quotes and everything for the story, that he was writing for the Post-Journal. And at times it was certainly not appreciated for his call. But on occasion, yeah, he would say, what do you think? What do you think? I don't know. It was pretty close. It could be anything. There was, and again, at the level of A-ball, which is what Class A baseball, this is the place to be bad, and this is the place to learn. So you would inevitably, a typical ball to, a second baseman to throw over to first, sometimes you didn't know if it was going to get there. Shortstop was even more dangerous. Third base could be even more dangerous because you never knew where a throw was going to go. And even though these kids had all played Little League, and American Legion ball and worked their way up through, this was pro baseball. Yeah. And they had not developed the skills quite yet that they needed to move on up.
You may remember we did a banquet honoring all the history of baseball. Cross the Seams book was part of that. And I got up and I was MC for like 2 hours seemingly, just introducing everybody because so many people were there. And the great story I told about Jim Riggs was the fact that he wrote an article about a no-hitter that had occurred against Jamestown. I think it must have been the Expos then. One of the great pieces of sports writing occurred Monday. And it dealt with a game that occurred Sunday. Now, I gotta tell you how it happened. The officials The official scorekeeper, if you don't know, for Jamestown, was not identified in the sports article. There was an article dealing with the fact that the Jammers won, as you recall, through a disputed play. It went from a one-hitter to a no-hitter, and artfully written by Jim Riggs, covering the game for the Jamestown Post-Journal. The dispute that went on between the managers, the players, and the official scorekeeper. And
a no-hitter yet.
Have you ever been second guessed?
Oh, yeah. You mean by the fans in the stands, or
The manager and those guys.
The scorekeeper, upon listening and reviewing, reported that, in fact, he decided to change his mind. At no point during the article written by Jim Riggs, sports editor for the Jamestown Post-Journal, did he identify the fact that the official scorekeeper for the Jamestown Jammers in the game was, in fact, Jim Riggs. He may have tried to knuckleball that by everybody, but he didn't. So, Jim, kudos for a nice try. Jim Riggs. Did you ever go down and do interviews? Did you ever leave kind of that public address piece and kind of use your voice? Because it's a terrific radio voice. You're a terrific voice, period. To do anything other than at the ballpark?
No. I was happy in my little cubby hole, working. Again, having the process all set up so it would always flow. We would never have too many crazy surprises, and we left that. We had broadcast folks coming in from, not only locally, we had broadcast folks coming in, but we had them coming in from other stations that were covering maybe the opposing team. We made good friends with a fellow from Niagara Falls, was down a lot. Got to know him very well. But no, I stayed in my role, and I was comfortable in my role during the entire time. I did do some Babe Ruth World Series work just as a fill-in. Don Nelson was the primary guy. That was really out of my wheelhouse because that was totally off of what I was normally doing. Right. And was run by that organization, so they wanted things very specifically at this time and so on. So I did that for a couple of years, but then I kind of let them go on their way. So. But I did a lot. Again, my announcing wasn't just the Expos / Jammers. I then, I think in 1986 or 87, Jim Mattis from the high school got a hold of me and said, "Would you like to do Red Raider football on Saturdays?" Okay. So I went and did that. Then I heard from JCC, "Would you like to do JCC men's and women's basketball announcing?" Okay. So I went and did that. Then Jamestown High School called again, "Would you like to do JHS basketball?" Okay. So by the time I was done, I was working 4 different sports at the same time. I'm glad I was young when I did this, because I wouldn't be able to do this now. But I pretty much followed, again, everything was in a process. And I had put everything in a book, knowing exactly what I had to do, had my own score sheets set up so I knew what to call and how to call. And I'll tell you something, the experience that I got in this, I just thought of this. Before I started working for the Expos in 1982, we went to a Toronto Blue Jays-Yankees game up in Toronto. And I'd heard the guy that was the announcer was very good. So I was half paying attention to the game, but I was listening more intensely to what the announcer was doing and how he would pronounce players. and the inflections in the voice and how he used his voice to build a level of excitement. And I took those lessons to heart when I started doing, if I'm going to do baseball, I want to do it correctly. And this guy was phenomenal. I don't remember who he is, but you know, when he announced Barry Bonnell, it would send, you know, chills up my spine the way that he did it, or George Bell, or any of those folks. And that was a really important teaching moment for me. And I kept that in the back of my mind whenever I did a game, you know, along the road. And we had some terrific games. We won, you know, a championship at one point, which was a very, very exciting night. I think we were all leaping up in the air with that, and you know, that was a lot of fun.
1994
yeah.
against Batavia, and we were down by one run. At the bottom of the ninth, and it was a seeing eye single.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob Rich was there, and Mindy, because we were all part of the bringing the team here. So it was Bob and Mindy, Bolani, Buchkowski, Dandy. I mean, it was the who's who. We hadn't seen since the opening game, and it was last inning, and then of course it goes into extra innings, and we win in the bottom of the 11th with a walk off, and it was chaos.
Oh, it was absolute chaos. We were so excited. That was so much fun to announce the end of it. Yeah. You know, and we always ended our game, for years we ended our game with the song Celebration by Earth, Wind and Fire, I think is who sang the original cut. And then when Bolani and company took over in I think it was 93 or 94, we played their Jamestown Jammers song at the end. You know, it was like, okay, but it was never my favorite song, but you know, it worked. It's just part of what you did. We got a little crazier with promotions when Mike Ferguson became general manager later on in the term, because Mike changed a lot of stuff and changed the way that we did certain things. And he was a really big promotion guy, you know, and we did all, you know, I can't even think of them all now. There were so many things that I would walk into, and what are we doing tonight? What are you doing to me tonight? But I need to know what you're going to do to me tonight, so, you know, I can prepare for it, you know. But then one season after Mike was gone, I can't remember the gentleman's name. It was, again, toward the end of my doing ball games. They had these giant red dice.
That's right
He would roll these things. We had to roll them down the screen.
Yes.
And we would store them upstairs, you know, and we were walking around these monstrous things all the time. You know, I just wanted to take a knife and stab them sometimes and say, let's deflate these. Because that's how crazy some of the promotions did get.
And they would actually have the participants up on the roof.
Yes.
Which was really...
they were off to the side, you know, and to let it go, and whatever you rolled, you won whatever the prize was.
And for those that haven't been on the roof, it's not the most safe thing in the world.
No, not if you're not used to it. You know, we could have cared less.
But still,
But, you know, it was always a thrill. Kids would come up. But we had a lot of, you know, Bob Ryan came up from the Boston Globe one night. Yeah. John Shearholtz from the Atlanta Braves came and visited. Those are a couple that I remember that, you know, and they came and they hung out, really, for long periods of time and talked and, you know, had a great time with them and visited with them. When you mentioned, I think this was when Tom O'Reilly was there, he hired an assistant. His first name was John, and he was, again, very young. I'd been doing this for a lot of years. And he had this thing about the Macarena. So we ended up doing the Macarena on the 5th inning. Okay. We brought up the kids that were working at the ballpark. Everybody had to do the Macarena. Well, we'd been doing the Macarena for about two months at this point. And Jim would look at me and I'd look at him. We would just shake our heads going, when's this going to end? You know, when are we going to stop doing the Macarena? But this young man insisted that we have to do this. So one night, something in the advertising or the copy had to be changed. And I had to make a decision about what I was going to do. So I had to put the spot into where the Macarena was. And so the Macarena did not occur on that evening. And he came barreling up the stairs. Jim and I are there. I don't know, Bob was there too. Jim and I are there talking. And he comes in the ballpark, or comes in the press box. And he begins to tell me his opinion. And you know, by this time I'm, you know, in my 40s, and he's in, you know, some kid 21, and he begins to tell me, you know, he's in charge. So, and Jim looked at me and he knew what was coming. And I turned to the young man and I said, you have two choices. You can exit the press box by the door behind you, or we will exit you out the window, and I hope you can grab something on the way down. Get out of here now. He never bothered me for the rest of the season, because I'm not about to have this snippy little kid who doesn't really know anything yet, you know, who's probably making at that time $5 an hour. You know, I'm in charge. Well, no, you're not. Up here, I'm in charge. So
what we have here is a failure to communicate.
Communicate. And we communicated clearly that that was not going to occur.
I love that. That's a great story. Tell me, how did you, since so many of the players at that time were starting to be Hispanic, and names that just aren't normally ones you might know in Jamestown and growing up. So how did you learn to enunciate their names?
A lot of times I would go down and I would ask the player, you know, and I wasn't, you know, trying to be, you know, I said, I have to know how to say your name. I want your name said properly. Tell me how you want it pronounced so I would know. And sometimes I would even spell it out phonetically on paper. And, you know, and so that way I didn't really mess up too often, you know.
That's great.
But you have to do that to learn, you know, properly, because I don't want to say something wrong and he turns around and stares at me. I had that happen a couple of times when I was doing them, but very rarely.
Did you have walk-up music in those days?
No.
I just didn't think.
No, we didn't get into walk-up music. Got popular really after I departed from there. Then they, you know, knew people were doing it, so they came up with that. But equipment-wise, I had I think a 5 or 10 CD changer. So I was able to rotate music in and out, hit cuts, you know, and still had cassettes. So this was all stacked. And this is all stuff that was mine that I brought and used to keep everything cohesive and to kind of keep it in order where it would work. So, and if we had equipment failures, which we did one night, opening, I think it was an opening night or something like that, and I'm on the field. And normally I never was on the field much, but I was asked to go down and do some of the opening game ceremony. So Bob Payne was next to the cassette player up there, and we put in the national anthem. So, you know, at this time, when I give you the cue, just hit the button. So I'm down on the field, he hits the button, and the tape breaks. Boom. Okay, well, I've got about 2,000 people sitting here, what am I going to do? So mercifully, I knew how to sing. I turned around and broke into full voice and sang the national anthem. And I've sung for years, so at least I managed to get through. I got a standing ovation from the crowd, and I'm praying to God, please never let that happen again. You know, but that was, you know, people were surprised that you can do that. Yeah, I was, thank heavens, because we were really lost at that point. You know, and it's one of those embarrassing moments in life when, you know, you don't know what you're supposed to do. Just do it. Just turn around and do it.
Talk about that brings to mind when the Brooklyn Cyclone came back. So it's the first game of Brooklyn in baseball since the Dodgers left.
Yes.
And it was in Jamestown. The schedule gods were good to Jamestown because we got it. USA Today. I mean, we have a media circus.
Yeah, we did indeed.
And I was able to bring in as our guest Carl Erskine. And Carl Erskine, a wonderful guy and many friends, but in the 7th inning, he was going to use his harmonica playing skills.
Yes, he did.
Take me out to the ball game. And now you may or may not remember that, but Dave Wellenzohn, because I was with Carl the whole time, so I'm videotaping like I do, and I'm walking him out, and this is all on YouTube. It's beautiful. And Dave Wellenzohn, general manager's coming out to get, you know, the mic. Carl's got the mic because he's got to figure it out with the harmonica.
Right.
But it's got to be connected, you know? And so Dave's sort of looking at me, and I said, well, I don't know, I'm filming. You know, so he's doing boom, 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 and all of a sudden you hear a click. The pin broke. You remember? And all of a sudden...
Yeah, okay, yeah, my memory's getting jarred now, yes.
Right here, the world, all the film, you know, the people from New York City, Brooklyn, who are all filming this thing, it didn't happen. And so then we went up into your press box, and Dave took over.
He did.
He took over and he said, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in the history of professional baseball, a top of the 8th inning stretch.
Yes,
You know,
and we did it again. It was fine. Carl had a blast doing that. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was, yes.
And I can recall every camera was huddled into that press box from every angle, trying to get this unique moment in time. But Carl was a good sport.
He was. He was. That was another very memorable evening.
Said only in minor league baseball.
Anything goes, right? Super. Hey, they were singing. I could hear them.
Oh, sure.
They were on top of you.
You know what? We prepped them in that inning before. They were ready now.
Good job.
Oh, that's great.
Just to the top of the ninth, too.
All right, let's keep it inventing.
Yeah, now we're here. Let's do it every half inning.
Just get back up here. I just got to figure out what sponsor I offended when I just bumped up the first game of the year.
Yeah, David was the last general manager that I worked for. He had come in and took over, and you know, he didn't have a lot of experience in that particular genre at that time. That wasn't his wheelhouse, but we got through the year together. You know, we had a few moments which were a little hairy, but we did get through them.
What I also recall, David would use the press box as his executive suite.
Yes, he did.
And
he wanted to make them entertainment spaces. He wanted to, you know, sell the boxes, and you know, and we kind of looked at each other like, okay, you know, it's up to you. It's your ballpark. You can do what you want, you know, as long as you leave us in our happy little spot. We're contented. And for the most part, everybody, you know, kind of accommodated us through the years. And
just a quick Dave Wellenzohn story, and I told him because, you know, again, looking at the park activities from a different perspective, mine, you would not know where David was during the game, except you would look up the box and you'd see a waft of smoke.
Yes.
You know, the cigars.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He was fascinating to work with. When I retired in 1999, he gave me a beautiful Jammer's jacket. We did the ceremony on the field and that, and offered me a lifetime pass, which I took, but I've never really used. Because surprisingly, after I left, I never really went back much.
Did you?
I would go to an occasional game, you know, once in a blue moon. You know, life had kind of changed by that time, so I was doing many different things at that point. So it was 18 years, 700 and some odd games that I did. It got to be long because, you know, as homestands, if they were home for 6 days, you were there for 6 nights, 6 days and nights, sometimes double headers. You know, we had nights when you finished the ball game at 1 o'clock in the morning and there's 3 people sitting downstairs and you're announcing a crowd of 2,000.
Yeah.
I don't know where those 2,000 people were, but there were 3 I could count in the seats, you know, so, but yeah, great experience.
Well, you were tremendous. I always wondered when you finally, you know, turn off that last switch at the ballpark, and if you were to listen, how you could listen dispassionately when you heard the public address announcer.
I did. I went down and somebody else was doing it. It's fine, you know. Okay, it's somebody else's turn. I had a very good time doing this. We had a lot of fun experiences, too numerous to mention. But it didn't really bother me. You know, I did with Red Raider football. I was there from 1986 to 2006, almost 20 years. And again, life changed, and it was time for me to step aside, and somebody else took it over, and I listened and thought he did a great job, and, you know, a little different from me, you know, different format, but, you know, that's the way it is, and, you know, these jobs are kind of cyclical. in how they work. And if somebody said to me, "Do you want to announce anything now?" I'd go, "No." You know, I had my time. It was fun. You know, my knees don't work anymore, so it's hard to get up and down. I used to run up and down those stairs at the stadium, you know, getting stuff. It'd take me an hour to get up and an hour to get back down after 3 knee surgeries. You just don't do it anymore. But, you know, it was a great part of my life. It really was. And
your best Bob Payne story?
My best Bob Payne story is he had an ongoing war with umpires, and some more than other. And Bob never hid his emotions. Even though you're up there doing a job and working, he would start, "You need my glasses." And he'd be yelling this at the top of his lungs. He looked over to me one night and says, "You have to play 3 blind mice." I said, "Are you out of your mind? I'm going to get fired doing that." And they would yell and back and forth. The umpires would look up at him. He'd look down at them. Nobody ever threw him out or anything like that. But that was Bob. He was very passionate about the game. Always was very passionate about the game and his little role that he had. But he never hid an emotion at any given time that he was there.
Did you ever, you played music obviously, and it's music which, popular music of the day. Did ASCAP or anything like that ever come and knock on your door and say?
No. I think the club dealt with that as they should have with licensing.
But they never came in?
No one ever came and said to me.
Did they ever get your playlist? Did they ever?
No, I just took stuff, like I said, I have, and I still do in my collections at home. I have scads of, you know, CDs and tapes and things that I played that are still sitting there. I've never disposed of them. I have them all, you know, from basketball, football, and you played different things. Football was, when I announced football, there wasn't so much music. We had music at the beginning of the game, but after that it was just the game.
Right.
And you just announced, you know, what was going on the field.
Well, you've been a terrific asset. Do you still keep did you keep your books?
Somewhere buried in my basement on a bookshelf, on a lower shelf somewhere. I probably have some of the things that I did. Haven't really looked at them too much. You know, I would change, like I said, I would change stuff very routinely. I would write new copy. If I didn't like the way something sounded, I would write new copy, change it around. You know, I always said you have to be prepared when you do these things. You have to have it all in good order to make it work.
I think that was absolutely your legacy there, and everybody talked about how organized you were. Wondered, just final question, your selection of music was yours.
It was mine.
Did you get critique? Did you get critics in the stands who said, "Why are you playing this? Why don't you play that?" You know.
I didn't get a critic in the stands. I got a critic from Chris Burgesson. If you remember Chris, she's now the ticket manager for the Kansas City Royals. Chris Dar, her name is now. We were friends, and we would get a home run or have a home run in a game when she was working there. And at the time, don't ask me why I did it, I would play the song "Wooly Bully" by Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs every time there was a home run. It drove her crazy. She hated the song. And I almost did it intentionally to annoy her. Chris, if you ever see this, I'm sorry. But we would do that to her, and Jim and I would just laugh. Play it louder this time, okay? But we always played that particular song. Finally, she really got upset, and I said, "All right, fine, I'll stop playing it. We'll find something else to play," which probably was worse than Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs, but
that's funny.
It was, yeah.
Well, you think about some of the people who passed their way through the stadium who are now on to bigger and better things.
Oh, absolutely.
Several.
Ricky Williams came through. Of course, became a running back for the Dolphins. Was there.
Heisman Award.
There's been a lot of them. One quick one is Bob Feller came.
Okay, yeah.
And Bob made appearances. Bob made appearances everywhere.
Yeah.
And Bob, you'd start negotiating with Bob You know, I know the GMs used to negotiate with him on a price, and he kept trying to come back to the ballpark all the time. You know, and it's nice, great. You got Bob Feller, had that great fastball, and, you know, marvelous career. But it got to the point of he'd come for a hot dog, literally, just to keep his name out there. And in a way, it was kind of sad at the end of his career to be out doing that. You're a Hall of Famer. You're so well known in Cleveland. You're so well known all over the world. Why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. And I talked with him a little bit when we were down there together. And I almost really honestly felt sorry for him because he was such an outstanding player. Just, you know.
He was hawking his wares.
He was hawking his wares.
Yeah.
And we had a few come through that did that, but that's how they made a living. So.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you for taking away your time. And if you need an affidavit to give to the boss, let me know.
No, I don't.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.